Hello everybody! Now on this second video we are going to see the novel itself. Let's begin by its title. That's to say, Broken April. Now I think that Broken April has two different meanings. An explicit meaning and a hidden meaning. Now with regard to the explicit meaning, I can say that in Albanian, broken in this context means something that comes after the middle of something else. So you could say, we could translate into English, after the middle of April. Why after the middle of April? Because the protagonist in the novel loses its freedom in April 17th, that's to say, after the middle of April, after April 15th. Now, this is what we could call the explicit meaning. But as I said, I think that there is a hidden meaning too in the title. So, in order to understand it, we should examine the word April. Now, you should imagine that you live in Northern Albania, in these mountainous areas, and obviously, as you know, April comes after winter. And in these mountainous areas, winter is like everything is dead, because during winter it's too cold, it falls a lot of snow and so on. But on April the snow gradually disappears and it's a kind of rebirth for nature. So nature borns again, if we can say it in this way. So the word April could be associated with the word hope or life, something like that. So in this sense, it could be broken life, broken hope, or to be more specific, his life is broken, his hope is broken, or his life is destroyed, his hope is destroyed. Why? Because the protagonist in the novel, in April 17th, loses its freedom. And why he loses his freedom? Because he was forced to follow the principle of blood revenge, the blood feud rule, custom. So in this way, after April 17th, he could be killed too, or he must remain under house arrest for all his life. That's why his life is broken, his hope is broken, and so on. Now, with regard to the year, we know that the novel was first published in 1980, and with regard to the date, we can say that obviously it's a fiction, it's not a real story, but we can say that the fiction can be dated in 38 more or less, 1938 more or less, in Northern Albania. Why? Well, because first of all, in the novel the author talks about the king. Now we know that the king of Albania left Albania on April 1938. 1939. Why? Because on April 1939 Albania was occupied by Italy. So we know that the fiction is before April 1939. On the other hand, the author talks about an institute, the Queen Mother Institute. It's a high school that was established in 1934, and we know that Diana Vorpsi, the wife in the novel, had finished the high school at the Queen Mother Institute, and we know also that the high school at that institute lasted 4 years. So 1934 plus 4, we arrive in 1938. So we can say that the date of the fiction is more or less in 1938. Now let's examine some character names of the novel. Let's begin by examining the protagonist, Gjorg Berisha. Now, Berisha, his last name, let me spell it, B-E-R-I-S-H-A, is a Muslim last name, a Muslim surname. As I said, the author tries to balance names or last names of different religions, of Christian religion and of Muslim religion. That's why I talked in the first video about the religion among Albanians. With regard to the name, to his first name, Gjorg, let me spell it, G-J-O-R-G, Gjorg. It can be related to the word GJORÄ. Now in Albanian, GJORÄ, let me spell it, G-J-O-R-E, means a poor person, a miserable person. But we're not talking in an economic sense. We're talking in a spiritual sense. So he is a miserable person, a poor person. And why he is a miserable person? Well, as I said, he was forced to follow the Kanun, to follow the blood revenge custom, and after that he could be killed too, or he must remain under house arrest for all his life. And what's important to notice about the protagonist is the fact that in the novel he is someone that is not married, and this is very important. Why? Because I think that the author does it on purpose. That's to say, Gjorg Berisha is not married, he's young and has no children, which means that, you know, he could be considered someone that is really a poor person, because if you have children, obviously your life in some sense would continue through your children. But if you have no children, then obviously it's worse, the situation is worse. Now let's continue by examining another character in the novel, and let's continue with Zef Kryeqyqe. Now, Zef is a Christian name. Let me spell it, Z-E-F, and it means, it's like Joseph in English. So, as I said, it's a Christian name, and obviously the author did it on purpose because, as I said, he wanted to represent different religious communities, Christian and Muslim community among Albanians. His last name, it's very important and it's ironic, is Kryeqyqe. Let me spell it, KRYE+QYQE. It's a compound word, that's to say, is a word combined by two words. It's like afternoon, after plus noon. And this compound word is composed by KRYE and GJORÄ. Now in Albanian, KRYE means the head, GJORÄ means alone, lonely. So, you know, he's like the leader of those who are alone, of those who are lonely. So in some sense, it's similar to Gjorg Berisha, to the protagonist. I mean, Zef Kryeqyqe is a lonely person and Gjorg Berisha is a poor person, is a miserable person. So, you know, their situation is similar in this sense. Now let's go on, let's continue with Besian Vorpsi. Now on the English translation, and I'm referring here to New Amsterdam Books in 1990, they have written this name in the English translation with two S's, with double S. That's to say, they have written B-E-S-S-I-N, sorry, B-E-S-S-I-A-N, but in Albanian is with one single S, not with double S. And Besian can be related to the word Besa. Now in Albanian, Besa is, let me spell it first of all, B-E-S-A, means a solemn promise. And obviously we are talking here about, an oral promise, not a written promise. So it's not a written contract, but it's simply an oral promise, as I said. And why? Because obviously, as I've said in the first video, these societies didn't have written documents, so they communicated with each other orally. So as you can imagine, as I said, is simply an oral promise, and this oral promise was considered very important, and you had to respect it, because if you didn't keep your word, your promise, then there could be grave consequences if you violated the promise. As I said, you could even be killed, or you could be fined for not having respected your promise, your Besa. So this is a very important aspect, and you know, we're talking here of a simple society where there were just a few interactions among people, so those interactions were considered very important. So you must respect what you promise. That's the idea. So it was considered Besa, the oral promise was considered something like a sacred, you know, something that it's very important to respect it. Now let's go on and let's see the last name of Besian Vorpsi. That's to say Vorpsi. Let me spell it V-O-R-P-S-I. Vorpsi is related to the word vorb. Now let me spell it V-O-R-B-E. Vorb in Albanian is a utensil to cook. It's a tool to cook. What did they cook? They cooked a lot of beans, because they ate frequently beans. Why? That's why the author talks about beans in the novel, if you've read the novel. Now let's go on and let's see Diana Vorpsi, the wife, or Diana Vorpsi in English. In Albanian is Diana. Now Diana in the Roman mythology is the goddess of wild animals, but it is also considered as the goddess of dead people. Now I think that both these meanings could be related to the novel. That's to say, with regard to wild animals, obviously we are in a wild world. In the world of Canon is a wild world because, as I said, people highly appreciated death and honor, but they underappreciated life. So, you know, they were people who maybe didn't know soft manners. They were just, you know, a bit rude. So in this sense, we can say that, you know, was a wild world, like the world of wild animals. But also we can relate it to the goddess of dead people, because, you know, the principle of blood revenge meant that a lot of people were killed because of the conflict between two families. And as I've said, the conflict could go on for decades and generation after generation and so on. So there were killed a lot of people. That's why we can also relate the goddess of dead people with the novel. Now let's go on and see another character, Binak Ali, or Ali Binak, as you can find in the novel. Now Binak Ali, obviously Ali is a last name or first name, depending on how you see it, but obviously Ali is a Muslim name. And Binak Ali was a historical figure. That's to say, he was a real person, and he lived in the 19th century. He was born in Northern Albania, but most of his life he lived in Kosovo. And that's why when I talked in the first video about Kosovo, I said it because I wanted to relate it to the fact that Binak Ali was used in this novel in order to represent the Albanians in Kosovo. Because, as I said, Binak Ali, most of his life lived in Kosovo. But the author used Binak Ali for another aspect too, for another motive, for another reason too. Because Binak Ali, during his life, managed to pacify, to resolve some conflicts between different families. So he was someone that worked very hard in order to end conflicts, feud conflicts between families. And that's why the author used him, beside the fact that he was someone that lived most of his life in Kosovo. Now, it's important, this character, also because we have to contrast it with another character, that's to say with Mark Ukachira, because Mark Ukachira is the opposite of Binak Ali. Now, Binak Ali is spelled, if you want to know, Binaqali. And Mark Ukachira, let's see now, Mark Ukachira, Mark obviously is a Christian name, Mark in Albanian, Mark in English. And but what's important here is to understand his last name, Ukachira. Now, let me spell it, Ukacjerra. This word is a compound word, is composed of two words, Uk plus Chira. Now, Uk, UK, in Northern Albania means wolf, the animal, W-O-L-F, sorry, wolf, W-O-L-F, and wolf plus Chira. Chira now is when people that were remembering someone who is dead were, that's to say, Chira means to cut your skin, like this one. And people did this gesture when somebody has died. So especially women did this gesture, and this is a gesture of deep grief, of deep mourning. And sometimes women could also cut their skin from their faces, and you could see blood on their faces. Now, why wolf plus, grief or deep mourning and so on? Because, as you may know, Marco Cacera in the novel is the person who collects taxes. That's to say, the person who collects taxes for each killing, because if you've written the novel, or if you are going to read, if you have read the novel, or if you are going to read the novel, you'll notice that when a person is killed, then they go and pay a tax to Marco Cacera, a tax of 500 groschen. So, as you can imagine, Marco Cacera is, as I said, the opposite of Binakali, because he doesn't want that conflicts between family end, that conflicts between families are resolved. Why? Because if conflicts between two families end, then it means that there will not be more killings, and if there will be not more any killings, then he would not collect taxes for each killing. It's related. So he is interested that conflicts go on and on, because each killing means for him a collection of a tax of 500 groschen. That's why I said that he is the opposite of the other character, the opposite of Binakali. Now let's go on and let's see the word Orosh. Let me spell it O-R-O-S-H, Orosh. Now, Orosh is a real town in Northern Albania, and it's important because there was the house of one important family of Northern Albania. But in the novel, Kadare, the author, uses another word too when he refers to Orosh, and he uses the word Orok. Now let me spell it, O-R-O-Q. Now Orok is could be seen as an ironic word, because when you hear it in Albanian it can make you laugh, but it could also be seen as in relation to the word oracle. Why oracle? Well, because this world of Kanun is a kind of oracle where everything, in some sense, is pre-established, is predicted, and so on. Because if a killing begins, then there could be other killings, and so on and so on and so on, because of the principle of blood revenge, of honor, and because of the fact that didn't exist a state, a central authority. So in this sense, the world of oracle, of oracle, of orok, because, as I said, everything is pre-established, predicted, and so on. Now let's see another word. This is a word invented by the author, Brezvtoti. As far as I know, Brezvtoti doesn't exist, and it's a village in the novel. And now Brezvtoti is a compound word and is composed of Brez, let me spell it, B-R-E-Z, and of the other word, Vtoti, F-T-O-H-T-I. Now, Brez means belly, Vtoti means cold. So, cold around your belly, something like that. And obviously, cold, if you feel cold around your belly, it means that you're feeling not good, you are feeling bad. And obviously, the protagonist is feeling bad because he has killed somebody and he too could be killed. So obviously he is not feeling well. In this sense, brezvtoti, that's to say cold around your belly, something like that. Now let's examine another word, the word Kula. Let me spell it. K-U-L-L-A, Kula. Now Kula is a house and it was made of stones with small windows. It was, generally speaking, of 2 floors, of 2 stories. It's like, I would say, a small castle, you know. Again, it's small, but it's like a castle because, as I said, it was built by stones and it had small windows. Now, I think that I finished here, so I want to thank you for your attention, and obviously it's a great honor to me. It's a great honor for me to have introduced you to one of the best known Albanian novels